Doug, who kicks this wonderful thing off?
The ball is in your court, sir.
Oh, did we finalize agenda? Just the background agenda?
Yeah, did you not get a copy of it, Jim?
No, I did not. I apologize. I got the notes that we were working on, but I didn't get the final. I'm so sorry. I thought we were like, oh my gosh. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome to
Jim.
the time together. Um, Apologies for not just jumping right in there.
Yeah,
Um,
so Ashley, could you post the agenda in the
Thank you,
in the
thank you.
chat?
Absolutely. Give me 1 second.
All right, thank you. Well, so I get to own all that awkward silence. This is very exciting. I'm the least silent guy. Uh, all right. How about Doug, do you want to do roll first, or shall we do new introductions, or do a round of introductions to kick things off? I know we're going to talk about civics and some of the government action protocols.
Yeah, I mean, however you'd like. So on the agenda was just the call to order, the welcome of the new
There we go,
members, and then the roll call
let's do it.
were the first three bullets.
All right. Well, we're going to rapidly go to call to order. May I please call this meeting of the Oregon Youth Works Advisory Board to order? Is there a gavel? Is there a little anything like that? All right. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, let's start with new members, please. Let's see. David, Digit, and who was my third person on my list?
Pella, and she is not in
Not with
attendance.
us. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Digit, may we ask you to share 2 to 3 minutes of who you are and first of all, welcome to the cast of characters here. Who you are, what you
Thanks.
do, and yeah, the passion focus that you bring into this arena.
Yeah, thanks. I am from Eastern Oregon, grew up in Eastern Oregon. I currently live in John Day. A little bit about my background. I taught in our K through 12 schools for 20 years, and now I currently work for Oregon State University Extension. And part of what I do is workforce development, college and career readiness. So when I saw this board, it looked like it might be an interesting fit. So visited with Doug on that, and here I am. So happy to be here. Happy to represent Eastern Oregon, and excited to be a part of this.
Welcome, welcome. And David.
Hi, I'm Davey. I was able to attend the last meeting, but kind of in an unofficial capacity, but I'm official now. I work for Discovery Your Forest out in Bend, Oregon. We're a nonprofit friends group for the Deschutes, the Ochoco, and the Crooked River Grassland. Half of my job is volunteer program management, and the other half is career pathways management. So little bit about me. I've worked for Oregon State Parks, Oregon Department of Forestry, the Forest Service, various nonprofits, heavy background with environmental education and interpretation. Went to college late, got a lot of help along the way, and I just get a lot of enjoyment out of helping youth out.
Wonderful, and welcome to you. Doug, do we have time to do a fast recap of introductions with folks? Did you want to include that today as kind of our roll call?
Yeah, I think we do, Jim. It's
Okay.
totally your call, but yeah, there should be time.
Okay. All right. I want to also acknowledge that Brooke is not with us this week, and as co-chairs, we can keep on moving with our meetings. So acknowledge that she is not with us. Ashley, would you be prepared to do roll call, and as people hear their names called, just really quickly again a quick recap of who you are, where you are, what you're doing?
Yes, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, not a problem. I apologize. I haven't done roll call before,
Oh,
so
that's all right.
if I could get some assistance from Sydney, please.
You bet. Let's see.
Sure thing. I'm right over here. So, Belinda Brown, are you here?
Absent today.
Yes, I'm
Oh, wait.
here. Hello.
Oh, there's Belinda. Apologies.
Hello, everyone. Good to see some Eastern Oregon, Central Oregon members. Finished raising my family out in Burns, Oregon, so pretty familiar with that area. And we actually had a tribal Onda Stewards program, so glad to hear the representation. My name is Belinda Brown. I'm a co-selecta band member of the Ojibwe Otsagay Nation, otherwise known as the Pit River Tribe. I'm also Northern Paiute in Isleta Pueblo. I'm a Tribal Partnerships Director with Lomacatsi Restoration Project and chair the Intertribal Ecosystem Restoration Partnership. We work across Oregon and Northern California, and most recently with our Indian Youth Service Corps program. We work nationally with National Park Service, and we have a multi-regional agreement with the Forest Service for the Indian Youth Service Corps. So we're a core network as of May, waiting on our accreditation, and we're also concurrently working towards apprenticeship for new standards in the Department of Labor for forest conservation worker and forest conservation technician. We've been a nonprofit founded by Mark Obey, our executive director, for 30 years next year. And we work all over the Rogue Basin. We work closely with our federal partners and also have a lot of help from our philanthropic partners. So good to see everybody. Do I popcorn it or you're going to roll call? Okay.
I gotcha. So I'm looking for the next person that I saw was here, Brian Bond.
Yeah, I'm here. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So yeah, name's Brian Bond. I'm the internship coordinator for the Malheur Works internship program. We are based out of the Frontier STEM Hub in conjunction with the Malheur Education Service District over here in Vail, over in Eastern Oregon. So yeah, we partner to provide with local employers to provide work experience, job experience, professional development for our graduating youth. So tomorrow is actually our last day of our summer program, and our 24 summer youth interns that have been working full-time for the last 9 to 10 weeks are all graduating out of the program and going off for their next adventures. So great to see everybody and great to be here.
Thank you, Brian. All right, and I think the person I saw next was Rena. Just
Hi, Rena
kidding.
Langston.
Perfect.
Rena Langston, Program Manager with the Southwestern Oregon Workforce Investment Board, overseeing our WIOA and state and federal contracts.
Thank you, Rena. And then the last person that I saw was here is Sahas. But I do know that they were driving, so we'll give them a second. If they can't come unmuted, then we'll just move along.
Sydney, I think Saha said in the chat that he wouldn't have access for speaking, but he could certainly listen.
They're
today.
in the chat.
So that was it, Jim. It's back to you.
All right.
And
Well,
I
thank
do
you,
want to
everybody.
inform you that we do have quorum as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Jim Taylor, 28 years in the classroom, parallel career in construction, renovation, remodeling, real estate development. 4 years at Oregon Department of Education, where I focused on career technical education programs for middle school and high school. Was engaged heavily in the development of career-connected learning programs. And then because I can manage middle school classrooms, I was hired at Oregon Housing Community Services to help support the rebuilding of homes for wildfire survivors. So we're in the midst of the building up of the federal program to support those who lost their homes in the 2020 wildfires, and beginning to build our readiness and resilience programs to support those who are currently losing homes. So that is the work that I do. And one of the projects that's a passion project for me in that work is thinking how can we be ready to respond and more resilient in our crisis response, whether it is homelessness or based on disaster. So working with a group called Team Oregon Build, which as I hope we all think about the programs that we're working in, that we support either programmatically or with passion, that we start to share those with one another in these chances together, as well as in future gatherings. So that said, I think we move into a public comment period. Is there anybody present today that wishes to provide public comment to the gathering?
I would like to jump in and say that we did not
Please.
receive any written public comment. So I think you're good.
Thank you much. And it looks like all persons here are known to us, are they not? Okay, so I did put a link into the chat for the meeting minutes from July 9th, if folks have had a chance to open that up. And we'll entertain. I think I would like to give everybody at least 30 seconds to do a fast scan. Okay, are there any questions related to the minutes as presented? Is there a motion to accept and adopt the minutes as presented?
I move that we approved minutes as submitted.
Thank you, Rena. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor with a thumbs up or an aye out loud? Thank you. That looks like unanimous to me. Appreciate it, everybody. Doug, you ready to share all about the joys of budget and legislative sessions? I see we even have a.
My water jar is half full, so I'm ready to start.
All right. Sounds good.
Ashley or Sydney, whoever is going to be running the slideshow, if that could get pulled up, please. All right. So let me just start with a disclaimer. This is a presentation that I put together just for informational purposes for today for you all. It's by no means meant to be an official guiding document, sponsored by our agency or anyone else. And also, I just feel like you're getting to hear a lot of me these last meeting and today. So apologize for that. It's just kind of how it's worked out. Hopefully in future meetings, I will be more on the sidelines. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the Oregon Legislative Assembly is the state government's board of directors, for lack of a better way of describing it. It's responsible for making laws that deal with Oregon's well-being, for adopting the state budget, and for setting public policy. The Assembly is made up of two bodies, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate consists of 30 members elected for 4-year terms. House consists of 60 representatives that are elected for 2-year terms. So each member of the legislature represents a district, which is an area determined by population. So every time the census count takes place, there is a chance that those boundary lines for the districts may change. Everybody in Oregon is represented by one state senator and one state representative. The legislature convenes annually in February at the state capitol in Salem. Sessions may not exceed 160 days in odd number years and may not exceed 35 days in even number years unless it's extended by a 2/3 vote in each chamber. So the sessions in the odd number years are what are known as long or full sessions. And the sessions in even numbered years are known as short sessions. So what's the difference? So long sessions give the opportunity for months of testimony and debate, tackling the big issues, tackling the state budget. In just a minute, I'll share a graphic of how an idea becomes a law. It's a long process. It's a very detailed process. There are specific deadlines built into it to make sure that the top priorities can make it across the finish line. The short session was really designed so it wouldn't have to take up to 2 years in between long sessions to do things like tidying up legislation or adjusting the budget as needed based on agency expenditures to date and future economic forecasts. Big bills and major funding requests do not typically happen during the short session. Just a fun little fact, about 3,000 bills are considered in each full session. That said, the legislature enacts about only 1/3 of those into law. Go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is how an idea becomes a law. And I know that this is a really busy graphic. We will make sure that these slides are posted with the minutes on our website. You can also go to OLIS, the Oregon Legislative Information System, online, and you can find this and a lot of other valuable documents there. And we're going to talk about OLIS here in just a moment. So we go to the next slide. All right, we're going to watch a short, it's about a 6-minute video. The video was produced to guide citizens and how to testify before the legislature, but it also just does a really nice job explaining how the legislature functions and how the committees function. So go ahead and play the video.
Give us 1 second while we pull it up. Perfect.
Welcome to the Oregon State Capitol, home of the Oregon Legislature. Here is where the laws are made that affect your day-to-day life, and where you, as the public, have an opportunity to weigh in on the decision-making process by offering testimony and giving your input on the bills that make those laws. Today, we are going to learn about the process in testifying before a legislative committee and how you can make a difference. When you're ready to testify, there are a number of resources available to help you prepare. The legislative website. Here you will find information on how to contact individual legislators. Look up Oregon Revised Statutes, access audio and video of committee hearings, research bills, and find out which committees are meeting. The OLIS website. Here you can access information on current and past committees, view agendas, review exhibits, tape logs, and other materials from past committee meetings. Once you have all your information and are prepared to present it to the committee, it's time to sign in. If you want to testify about a particular bill, you'll need to sign in. The witness form is usually located inside the hearing room near the door. Be sure and fill in all the appropriate information. Any information you put on the witness registration form, turn in as written testimony, or say while testifying is, by law, public information. Once submitted or put on the record, it is available for anyone to see on the legislature's website. Once it is submitted, it cannot be deleted. When you sign in, you create a record of your participation in the committee hearing, and that list is given to the chair of the committee, so he or she can call you up during a public hearing.
With that, I'd like to call up, please, Kurt Martin. And folks, I can't read your writing here. I have a Matt and a Rex.
While all hearings are open to the public, not all include public testimony. Some can be work sessions or include invited testimony only. So be sure to check the committee agenda. You'll find a committee agenda posted outside of each hearing room prior to the meeting. The agenda will also include contact information for the committee carrying the bill, in case you have any questions. A public hearing is when the chair has scheduled time to take public testimony on a bill. A work session is when the committee takes action on a bill, such as amending it or voting it out of committee. When attending a public hearing, even if you're just there to listen, Etiquette is important. There should also be no distractions during the hearing, such as signs, balloons, clapping, shouting, or the use of any audible electronic devices. If you have any written documents regarding the bills being discussed, give them to the committee assistant before you sit down at the witness table. If possible, email your documents to the committee assistant 24 hours in advance of the hearing. This way, it can be posted on the OLA's website and made available to committee members prior to the hearing. It is the chair's prerogative to call people to the witness table in any order. You may be called up individually or in groups. If other elected officials are in the room, they may be called up first in respect of their schedule or other time constraints.
The first one that we're going to start out with, because we've got some representatives and senators that have other committee obligations.
Typically, people who have traveled over 100 miles will be called up first to testify. The chair may also impose a time limit depending on how many people wish to testify and how much time there is allotted for the hearing. When you are called up to testify, move to the witness desk. Please do not approach the dais during the hearing. All hearings are audio recorded. Place the microphone at a comfortable distance and speak normally. So begin your testimony by identifying yourself. Say your name and where you're from. When addressing a member, address them through the chair.
Good morning, Chair Witt and committee members. I'm Curtis Martin, recent president of the Oregon Cattlemen's Association.
There is no right or wrong way to testify. Many people will simply tell how the bill personally affects them. When it's your turn to speak, try not to read your written testimony word for word. Instead, just summarize or highlight the most important points.
Harry Vanderpool, Oregon State Beekeepers Association, Vanderpool Farms in South Salem. Thank you, Mr. Chair, representatives, for the time.
After your testimony is complete, offer to answer any questions.
Be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions? All right. Thank you very much for your testimony.
When answering questions from members, address the chair first, then address the member who asked you the question.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, yes. And I do want to add, I used the example of the
Wait for all the witnesses to complete their testimony before leaving the witness desk. If you do choose to leave the hearing room, remember, if the hearing is still in progress, to take all your conversation into the hall. Please don't be intimidated by the etiquette and rules for testifying. They are in place to keep the proceedings and debate organized. The Oregon State Legislature thanks you for making a difference.
Turn off my mic here or turn it on. All right, if we could go to the next slide, please. So this is kind of an alphabet soup slide with some of the common acronyms that we use when we're talking about legislation or budget making. I'd like to start with just a very high-level breakdown of the budget process. So the ARB is the agency request budget. And this is the budget that the HEC and other agencies put forth for consideration by the governor as she develops her governor's recommended budget, or the GRB. Once the governor's budget's been approved, it goes to the legislature, where it'll be debated over the course of the long session. And the end result is the legislatively adopted budget, or LAB, that goes to the governor for signature. Other commonly used acronyms that include CFO, or the Chief Financial Office, which is housed at DAS, which is the Department of Administrative Services, which really is the administrative wing of state government. LFO is the Legislative Fiscal Office. LC stands for Legislative Concept. And then there's POP, which is acronym for a Policy Option Package. So I want to talk just real briefly about the difference between an LC and a POP. So legislative concepts are developed to amend or create new laws. LCs typically do not have dollar amounts included. Policy option packages, on the other hand, do include new financial asks. And both the LCs and the POPs are drafted eventually into bills that are then debated in legislative committees. And then the last term that you'll hear us use and you'll hear the legislature use is sine die. And really what sine die means is that session has adjourned. The next slide. All right, so this is busy too, so I don't want to get hung up on all the alphabet stuff going on in here, but I do want to illustrate just kind of a rough timeline for concepts and budget making. So we started the process for the 25-27 session last summer and fall. And we started drafting our POPs and our LCs, which helped inform what our agency request budget would look like. These were turned into the Chief Financial Office for review in January. And with governor's staff, it was reviewed, they were edited, suggestions were sent back to the agency, and edits were made. So today, I don't know if it's happened yet or if it's happening this afternoon, the full head commission will be voting to approve the agency's request budget. So all the agencies, they'll turn their budgets into the governor. The governor will start drafting her budget and will have her recommended budget released in December. And then the legislature uses her budget as the starting point to craft the legislatively adopted budget. So by June, the LAB is submitted to the governor for signature and the legislature adjourns. And the new biennium for state government begins on July 1st. And right after that, we start developing LCs and POPs again in the summer and fall, focusing on the 27-29 biennium and budget. So while we have a biennial budget structure in place for the state, it also is about a 2-year process just to start drafting and get a budget completed or drafting a legislative concept that could turn into law. So for example, the legislative concept that went through to form this board started about just a little over 2 years before it was actually signed into law. So it's a lengthy process. If we jump to the next slide. So I just had posted some resources. We heard about OLIS. OLIS is a great site. I go there multiple times a week. I also posted, there's a link that goes to the governor's instructions that she gave to state agencies while drafting their budget for the 25-27 biennium. And then I also put in a link to the Oregon Secretary of State. And there are so many resources on that website. It's great to dive into just for learning purposes. One of the things that are housed there are the Oregon administrative rules. I wasn't planning on going into OARs today, but I just did want to post the link because it's a very helpful link when we're just starting or when you're just starting to learn about how the whole process works. So I'm going to stop right there. And if we could stop screen sharing for a minute and just see if there are any questions. I know that was pretty fast and pretty high level. We could get way in the weeds and go 3 or 4 hours.
I think I'll lift a question if there's no others at the moment. Doug and staff and all the folks that are working on the Oregon Youth Works programs. First, I want to say thank you to the board for meeting 1 month after we kicked off. That's very rare in boards generally that support the work in state agencies. Usually it's that quarterly meeting, but we heard loud and clear, like, let's get right into this. How can we be best advocates in this programmatic work? Doug, are we in a position to be voices, faces in the long session that's coming up? Or are we to really stay focused on kind of this learning curve? I've heard an eagerness among some folks that I've talked to that we would like to get out there. We would like to be a voice. We would like to advocate and inform and educate and share these best practices that are occurring and work towards that model. Is this the right path? Are we on the right path to be active in the coming session?
Yeah, so I think both. Your question was a little bit 2 parts there, but
Sure.
yeah, absolutely. There is the learning curve right now, and everybody's kind of getting up to speed. But you're right, and I echo your thanks for folks coming together in just a month's time. That's a lot of time to take out of people's schedules, so super appreciative of that. But that was the whole purpose, was to start just jumping into this and moving along and not waiting for 3 months to learn something and then another 3 months, and pretty soon it's too late to even testify or do anything during the session. So yeah, so we'll talk about kind of that lobbying here in just a little bit, or presenting to the legislature. And the words that you used just now, Jim, were key. You talked about educating, you talked about informing, you talked about sharing of best practices. Those things are all things that we can do, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's the lobbying that gets a little crazy in there.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions before we move along? All right, I think we can bring the slides back up, please. So the co-chairs asked me to take a little bit of time to talk about the data that Oregon YouthWorks currently collects. And we're definitely going to, oops, there's Belinda's hand, I see. Go ahead, Belinda.
Well, we had just heard some of your report last time. Doug, are you happy with your budget for?
So that's kind of a loaded question. Is the budget sufficient to fulfill the current need? It is not. As far as being, accepting the budget, we will accept whatever the governor puts out in her governor's recommended budget. That said, she's already, or her office has already seen what the ARB looks like, and I think it's gonna be what's in there currently and being approved at the HEC today. So certainly greater need than what's been drafted.
Thank you.
Anyhow, so yeah, we'll have more robust discussions around data and where we would like to go with data and your involvement in that process. But right now, today, it's just kind of where things currently stand. So if we go to the next slide, please. So while our data is aligned probably better than it ever has been before, we still have some snags to figure out. And one of the major problems is that we collect data differently for each of our programs. We don't have one centralized database for all of our grantees to use. Oregon Youth Corps, however, is rolling out a new reporting portal that Oregon Conservation Corps grantees can also utilize. The Oregon Youth Employment Program still utilizing spreadsheets that get compiled and bundled into one final product. And the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act utilizes a system called iTrack. But that's a program that's not housed or owned by HEC. It actually lives at one of the local workforce development boards. And on top of that, some of our programs have mandatory participant surveys, some have an optional survey for participants to fill out, and some have just no requirement at all. So it's a little bit across the board. If we go to the next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about demographics. Note that demographics, a lot of the demographics are protected and we can't mandate that they answer. We can ask though that they prefer not to disclose or they choose not to answer. So I'm not gonna read bullet for bullet these next slides. We're gonna kind of roll through them just to give you an idea at a high level what we're looking at. I don't have prepared for you today actual totals looking at last year, looking at last biennium. Staff are working on that right now, and we hope to have that put together for you, hopefully by the next meeting. If not, it's going to be right soon after that. So one of the things that we look at is gender. And go to the next slide. We look at race. The next slide. We look at different barriers, and this helps us track which populations are being served and also helps us track where there may be additional need. And one thing that our programs have started recently is tracking zip codes, which is just another way to be able to ensure that we're serving prioritized populations, because the zip codes can be compared to a social vulnerability index. And it's just another tool for us. On the next slide, coming up, just the general data. So, I mean, we collect things like the number of participants, the age, did they complete? How many hours did they spend in educational activities, versus work-based learning versus hard skills. One thing that's not on this slide, it's just an oversight of mine, but it's extremely important, is I don't have a bullet that talks about financials. And all of our grantees are required to provide an accounting of the funds that we've given them. And then that data gets broken down into wages and supplies and transportation, and we can start looking at trends and seeing what percentage in aggregate across the state say go to wages or go to transportation. Go to the next slide. We're almost done here. So I mentioned that our data is aligned better than it ever has been, but it gets tricky as each program has specific things that needs to be reported on it. And some of them have, it's just one program. There may be two programs that have a similar requirement, but it's not complete or consistent across all programs. And so just as an example, the Oregon Youth Employment Program, OYEP, it tracks industry sectors that the youth are being trained or working in. That also happens under WIOA. Doesn't happen under OYC. Another example is the Oregon Conservation Corps, OCC. They need to collect the number of acres and the number of sites treated for fuels reduction. That's not a requirement that our other programs need to track. And it just goes on. So it's one of the challenges that we face when we talk about aligning our data and trying to have this comprehensive look that's not fragmented. And next slide. So we also collect information on impact. And I mean, a lot of that comes from the data and the demographics and those other numbers that we have. There are also other ways to look at that. Some of it comes just in narrative forms in our reports. Some of it comes from surveys. Some of it comes from just individual impact stories that are shared. So just a few examples, because we could just go on and on and on what's included in here. But one of the ones I really like to look at is is this their first time in a workforce training program? I mean, where are we connecting with folks in each of the programs? We have specific questions. We have open-ended questions on the different reports. You know, the specific questions are like what skills were gained, and there's a selection where they can check the boxes. You know, open-ended questions are more self-reflection, and not all the programs ask this, but some do. Specifically, this one comes from the Oregon Youth Corps. You know, if not for this program, what would you currently be doing? So we look at the impact in a lot of different ways, but it's a snapshot in time. It's just real time. We don't have the mechanisms in place, or we haven't in the past, to say, okay, in 5 years, where are these folks? WIOA does that somewhat. There's a retention requirement, and they have to check in and report out where folks are. But it's pretty cumbersome, and it's just program specific. So I think that wraps up what I wanted to share just as a general overhead. I think after visiting with Jim and Brooke about it, they'd like to have deeper conversations about the data that we collect and how can we align it. We'd like to look at what other states are doing and what are other best practices. They asked about other state systems, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But I think this is going to be a conversation that the co-chairs want to continue having in future meetings. So I'll open it up for questions, or Jim, give it back to you, or both. We could probably turn the slides off.
Yeah, and I think this is a great time if you have questions, anybody, of Doug's presentation, the content therein, or what's some of that data that immediately comes to your mind that is key in our discovering the work that is being performed and how to advocate it moving forward. Belinda, please. Possibly screen frozen. Or did mine freeze? I see Doug moving. Okay, Belinda, are you with us? Okay,
Yeah,
there we go.
I am. I jumped on my phone. Did everybody freeze?
We've got you.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things, Doug, I'm going to age myself, is we used to, through prevention, have the MDS system through the State Incentive Cooperative Agreement Grant. So we were pretty streamlined then in our data collection. We had to get standardized. And then also, I know we have a DHS YEP program serving 18 to 24-year-old parents on TANF. We have to track their hours very carefully. And so they have people putting together smart sheets now, and Lomacatzi's been using smart sheets for about 5 years, but this was a smart sheet application that was really impressive. So I do know that standardizing our data input is really crucial for us to be data driven in our strategies.
Thank you, Melinda. Digit, I saw your hand go up.
I was just curious on the barriers that you showed on that slide. How were those determined as far as which ones were chosen? And then do you feel like those are doing a good job on the impact side or on the data collection?
Yeah, thank you. I'll do my best, and I may actually hand it over to Jeremy if he's able to speak, because he's kind of our data guru for all of our programs. He's got a pretty firm grasp on it. Some of the things that we're looking at are populations that have been identified that have been traditionally marginalized or left behind. And so we're looking for those. We look at youth that are involved in the juvenile justice system, but part of this discussion that we need to have with our data is, what do we do with the data once we get it? And I don't know that we do anything with that data. I mean, it's a cool number. We can say 35% have involvement in the juvenile justice system, or whatever that number is, but we really don't do a lot or leverage that, other than put it in a graph that goes to legislators that may or may not look at those numbers. Jeremy, is there anything more specific, if you're able to speak, and how those are determined?
Yeah, when we first had the opportunity to look at centralized data, the conversation came back around how do we capture the various different definitions and that come from the state and the federal different agencies. And that really provided us a broad challenge to figure out what these look like. But we also started looking at with the Racial Justice Council, some of the priority populations that were identified within that, and then kind of walking it back to the WIOA and looking at the populations they're serving as a starting point for conversations. And that was just the starting point. So looking at what those were, what the priority populations were, and then what are some of the barriers that we know we're seeing out there in the field that we're capturing that might not be involved directly with some of those, and then trying to figure out how do we create definitions that capture a program, and am I working with that specific type of youth or participant? And so looking at those is where we started the conversation, not necessarily where we're ending the conversation. And the other thing I would just say is the biggest challenge that we walk to is the trauma-informed approach of the organizations trying to work with their individuals and learn about their individuals without having them to retell their story every single time, just for a data collection point. So when we start looking at this information, we see this as the baseline of what we know to be true about the youth, not necessarily what is the actual number. So we estimate these numbers to be much higher than they are, but this is what the known information is through that interaction with the organization and the individuals themselves. And so that's the starting point for where we look at this data and how we capture it.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Any additional questions, comments, thoughts on data? Doug, are you in a place to move right into lobbying? And if we have extra time, we can have a little bit of free discussion space.
Yeah, I think real quick too, we just, I can hit on the statewide longitudinal data system.
Apologies. Please, thank you.
And then we'll just roll right in. I just want to be sure that Belinda doesn't have another question, or if her hand is just still up from her previous question.
My hand is still up, Doug. However, I do believe, again, I will reiterate that some of our centralized data, especially when the pandemic rolled out and the systems that we had to use from the state, I do believe it helps us when we have that. And I don't know how we can get there, but being able to mine the data is what I've always heard is what justifies our existence. So we have to tell our success stories, and we have to bring those metrics to Congress or to the state legislature to make sure that we continue to get funded. So it is really important to mine out and evaluate how we're doing.
Thank you. Well, that's actually a nice segue into our next topic of the SLDS, the Statewide Longitudinal Data System. It's a system that's overseen by the Oregon Longitudinal Data Collaborative, which is made up of 4 agencies. One is the HEC, one is the Employment Department, one is the Department of Education, and the other is the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. So the system houses data from K-12, from post-secondary education, and workforce, and agencies are able to conduct studies and provide data reports, both for agency use, for the general public, for the legislature. Brooke and Jim and I talked about it when we were talking about this meeting. Could we get kind of an update on where is the SLDS? It's been in the works for a long time. For folks that have been around, you've been hearing that acronym for a long time. And where is it? So it is up and operational. I did reach out, and the team lead for the SLDS staff is willing to come to a future meeting and present on what the system can and cannot do. I think there sounds like there have been a lot of misconceptions on what its capabilities are. So, I'll work, Jim, with you and Brooke to get that on a future agenda, but they are willing to come, and they might even be able to come to next month. So
that would be great. I just put in those four zones of partnership in the chat. Yeah, it's a big one. It'd be a big win in so many ways if it was more adaptive and flexible and yeah.
I'm ready to roll right into the lobbying if there aren't any questions. I wouldn't probably be able to answer many questions on the SLDS, but if there are questions, I could certainly write them down and find answers out.
Let's do that, but I want to give a heads up to staff because I think it's important that the board understands that we are supporting, and we are supported by a staff at HEC CCWD. And what I'd like to forewarn people is, so that you don't feel like I'm throwing you right into the spotlight, people that are out there working in these Oregon Youth Works programs, would you share some bright lights with us? Would you give us some stories of things that you're seeing with your grantees, with the people that are working in your programs, just to kind of shine a quick spotlight and highlight that work that's going on? And then Ashley, get ready, because we want an introduction from you to learn more about you, because we're going to be all working with you very closely. And if I could ask the same of you, Doug, just kind of until we get into these meetings and really know the faces and the names and where we're all kind of seated and find ourselves working from, if we can kind of just continue this reminder and share out of who we are and what we're doing. So Ashley and Doug will look for an intro from you, and then staff that are working with Oregon Youth Works programs, if you could get ready to share some highlights, that'd be great. We'll do that right after we hear from Doug on lobbying, please.
Right, well, we'll get through it, and then we'll get into the rest of the introductions. So the lobbying, this is a larger topic. I started to put together a presentation, and then I didn't really feel like I could really do it justice in the amount of time that we would have on the agenda, or just really in my level of subject matter expertise in this area. So what I do want to share is just kind of a high level, these are kind of the things just to keep in mind, is that as board members, you're considered a public servant when you're acting in your official capacity as a board member. So therefore, you have very similar rules and restrictions around lobbying, just like state employees do. And I think the main thing, that the easiest way to kind of do that litmus test of, is this lobbying, is this not lobbying, is some of the things that you mentioned earlier on, Jim, about how we tell the story. If we're out there and we're educating, if we're answering questions, that's fine. What we have to do is we just need to make sure that we're not coming across as supporting or advocating or lobbying, for budgets or initiatives that are not supported by the governor. And sometimes that can get tricky. One of the things that will happen, has happened in the past, and I see it happening, excuse me, again, particularly as Oregon Conservation Corps is not included in the agency request budget, there may be legislation that gets put forward that adds funds for the program. And we may be called, typically with the board, it would be the co-chairs. It doesn't have to be limited to that. Staff will be called to provide information that's directly linked to a legislator's bill. So what we do in that situation is we just clearly state that as an agency, as a board, we're neutral. We're not taking a side on the bill, but we can talk about it. We can share the successes. We can share even what's going to happen if funding isn't secured. We can say this many jobs will be lost. This many hours of educational training will be lost. We just can't say, so we need $10 million to fix it, or we need $40 million to fix it. That's where the lobbying piece comes in. So that's really just kind of a real basic test to keep in mind. One thing's pretty cool. I've not read through all of it. It's a large document, but the governor's office just released a board member's handbook. I did kind of glance through at a high level, looked at some bolded words. I looked for lobbying. There is a section on lobbying. We'll make sure that you all get a copy of that. Future forward, all new commission and board members that are appointed will receive a copy at the time that they are appointed, but we'll play a little bit of catch up in the background. So like I said, there's a whole section on lobbying. It has links to different laws, different policies. And I think if folks could take time and be my recommendation, but if folks could take time and read through that and see if there are questions after that around lobbying, then what we could do is put a good chunk of time on our future agenda and maybe ask somebody from the Board of Ethics to come over and provide a detailed training that was designed just for our board. So that's what I had on that, Jim.
Fabulous. Thank you. Questions from anybody present? I will ask a question for clarity. I heard we will not, should not, cannot, could not support, advocate, lobby for things not supported by the governor. Did I hear that correctly in terms of the delineation between the things that one can speak to and one cannot speak to?
When you're in your official capacity as a board,
right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Jim Taylor, resident of Oregon, you're free to do whatever you would like, but in that official capacity, if we've been asked to testify and we've said that the co-chairs are going to come in and you're speaking as a co-chair, then the same rules apply as apply to us.
Thank you. Sahas, thank you. We caught that in the chat. Hope you have a safe and wonderful day. And thank you for jumping in and out to listen in. Thank you, Doug. Any questions, anybody else around the clarity of that fine point? Okay. Can I open it up for general questions for Doug on any of the presentation? Do my middle school classroom 10-second count. All right. If there's no objection, I would love for Ashley to give us an introduction and then Doug to follow, and then we'd like to hear some highlights and spotlights on programmatic work that's taken place, if that's all right with everybody. And we will be out by 3:15. Ashley, are you ready for this?
I am ready.
All right.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley. Welcome to the new board members. And Jessica, I'm glad you were able to make it in. I'm very new to the HEC. My first day was June 17th, so I just greatly appreciate everybody's patience while I learn everything. It's exciting to be a part of this board, and I'm very eager to work with all of you. A little bit about myself. I graduated from the University of Oregon down here in Eugene with a psychology degree last year. I spent a lot of time in my late teens, early 20s, participating in AmeriCorps programs in both California and Washington, which ultimately changed the direction of my life, and I think came full circle when I landed here at the HEC. So it's really nice to be on this side of things. I feel like as I grow within the agency and on the Youth Works board, my perspective just will be beneficial to, whatever we're working on. And again, I'm really excited to work with all of you. So feel free to send me information or just reach out if you have any questions, and I will do the same.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much. Anybody have any quick questions of Ashley? All right, Doug.
What do you want from me, Jim?
I just want everybody to get to know Doug as well as I know Doug.
Wow, I'm going to put this in my pocket that you're kind of a wild card on the agenda.
Oh, be ready. There's extra time. We're going to get something done.
All right. Hi, I'm Doug, everybody. I come from Eastern Oregon as well. I grew up in Vail. I served on a youth corps crew my junior summer in high school. I didn't know what it was other than it was a really cool job. Later to find out that, wow, I was a corps member. Went into sales right out of college. I was a terrible salesman. I ended up getting a job working with a contractor that contracted with the Department of Human Services. I worked for the Training and Employment Consortium in Malheur County. And one of the programs that we had and one of the programs I oversaw was the Oregon Youth Conservation Corps. So that was my initial plug into this work in the year 2000. And I'm still kicking around. People are still putting up with me. So I live in Dallas. I have 3 adult children. I have a wonderful wife. I have a little grandbaby who is 9 months old, I believe this week. And yeah, this work is my life. It always has been. It's been fun to help the programs expand. And it's now fun to kind of sit back too and watch new folks come in with maybe a little bit more energy than I have anymore, but to really develop these new programs and take them to the level where they need to be operating. So that's me. I don't know where you want to ping pong it from there, Jim.
I didn't know that you lived in Dallas. We could be going to Yeasty Beastie together.
Are you in like Monmouth or Independence?
I'm in Monmouth.
Cool.
All right. Okay. That's an offline conversation. We'll get there. Thank you. Yeah, that's why we share. We learn new things every time. Staff that's working on Oregon YouthWorks programs. And get ready, Miranda, because we're going to ask for an introduction from you too. Watch out. Staff working on programs. Anybody want to call out a highlight, spotlight one of your grantees? All right, Hillary, get us started off, please.
Hi, everybody. I know quite a few of you on here, but just because everyone else is doing introductions, I'll do them too. I'm also a Polk County resident over here between Doug and Jim. I think I'm going to popcorn it to Jeremy afterwards just to get all of our Polk County people in one fell swoop. I am originally from Idaho. I was born and raised in the Treasure Valley. Thought I was going to become a middle school teacher, and then realized that the things that I liked the most about working with students was working with those students that needed additional supports that you're not able to provide as a teacher. And especially in the education system in Idaho, there wasn't time or space for that. So I started pursuing alternative ways to get involved with students and to help them on their journeys and to make sure that they feel like they belong and can be a part of something. So I worked for a little bit with the State Department of Education in Idaho. Through that, I got to sit on the Serve Idaho board, the AmeriCorps Commission in Idaho. And they actually turned me on to applying for the job over here in Oregon. So super fortunate that I think I applied for like 4 different jobs with the HEC and was able to get one. So thanks, HEC, for hiring me. The grant that I work with most closely is Oregon Conservation Corps. The intention of Oregon Conservation Corps is to reduce fire fuels, create fire adapted communities, and train the future land managers of tomorrow. We have seen really exceptional work done in this space. And I've got to say, every single site visit that I go to, I think there's always one student or one person that I talk to that says, before this, I was homeless or I didn't have a place to live. That in itself, I think, is a win on behalf of OCC. But the work that they do and the way that they interact and interface with their community really brings them brings them purpose, a sense of purpose, and a sense of agency. I think that a lot of young people right now are thirsty for, feeling like they belong and they can do something. We have 10 current grantees in our Oregon Conservation Corps portfolio. We are seeing this year, this fire season, direct impacts of properties that had received an OCC treatment that were spared because that treatment took place. So that's pretty darn exceptional. And then the other side effect, as well as direct treatment impact and youth direct impact, is that I think all of the people that are impacted by an OCC treatment, the homeowners and neighbors that are impacted by OCC treatments, feel a stronger sense of community as well. So they feel like they are finally kind of getting attention from the government or whatever else. Like they are benefiting from the state having something in their community, and these dollars are really able to empower these community-based organizations to continue or amplify excellent work that they're doing. We've also seen direct placements from OCC programs into Forest Service, ODF, and so on. So the mission of getting people trained up to go into real life jobs is happening and taking place as well.
Wonderful, Cher. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you for all the good work you're doing.
Call Jeremy
So
next
very
because he lives in between me and you.
Is that what it is? Jeremy, are you
Yeah.
up for this? And then we'll go for one more volunteer after that. Jeremy.
Not a problem. Jeremy Ahla, I work with a grant called Oregon Youth Corps. I've been in that program roughly 8 years now with the state of Oregon, now almost going on my 19th year. Previously, before this work, was doing work as a park ranger for the state of Oregon in a couple of different locations throughout the state. And I was looking for a little bit of a career change, much like a lot of our participants are looking for opportunities of where they want to go and do next. And was presented with an opportunity with Oregon Youth Conservation Corps 8 years ago, and haven't looked back since. This has been one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever been a part of. It's frustrating, it's beautiful, and it's catching youth at a moment in life where they're trying to figure out who they are, what they want to do, and what their place is in their community. And it's a phenomenal experience. The program I administer, I work with 32 organizations across the state of Oregon, including federally recognized tribal sovereign nations, local governments, nonprofits. If they have an interest in their local community to serve local youth on local projects that have a public benefit, we potentially have a conversation on doing business together. So a lot of times these youth in statute come from an at-risk population, and we've seen some of those barriers, but at risk in a community in Eastern Oregon may look very different than what it does in urban Portland. And so what we're seeing is these opportunities to customize experiences. What are your community issues that you face, and how can we help you be a part of that solution, and using youth as part of that solution, but not necessarily the answer to it, but introducing them to their community aspects, teaching them job skills, learning about their communities, meeting people of important community statute, and figuring out how they can have a voice in that space. I think one of the most unique things that I've seen recently is I was just in Coos Bay this week. I try to visit programs as possible on an every other year basis, which puts me on the road quite a bit, but listening to stories directly and talking with youth, the partners, and those community leaders to figure out how the program is going. So as a grant administrator, we can figure out if what we're doing is aligning with our intent, and how do we do better to fill some of those gaps. But I was just in Coos Bay this last week, and one of the participants there was just at the starting part of their experience, but one of their leaders started in that program 10 years ago as someone who was misguided and has found their way into a passion because of that work. And now 10 years later is going to work on their graduate degree, working for the very organization that hired him as an individual, as a crew leader, to give back in their summer months, to make money to pay for their college and fulfill what their future dreams look like in natural resources. So it's just kind of one of those cool full circle moments to visit and see someone who is living and experiencing at the very front end of their career, now in the middle steps of it and seeing where they're at. And then the other thing I just really wanted to share too is some of you may have heard this, but our agency now has tribal student grants to help pay for post-secondary college for tribal citizens within many of the state here. And we are working now with Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, and one of the programs they're working with are very similar. So we have direct conversations with them. And one of the things that they're starting to share is they're working with youth who never saw themselves in a place of going beyond what their reservation boundaries have told them to be. But their program is now exposing them to the work projects. They're going out on trips to visit the colleges. Now they're seeing what's possible, and they're starting to see that link of what's possible. And now they have an institutional funding package that helps pay to make those dreams a reality. And so we're helping connect some of that larger picture of our agency, but also youth being in a place to be able to see what's possible for them and have a tangible place to get there. And so that's really some of the cool bright spots that I'm seeing. There's tons of stories. There's plenty of impact that happens in every place that we go and visit. And I just welcome, if any of you are, I'm in your area, I'd be happy to take you out and do a visit with you.
Jim, you're talking, but no, we can't hear you.
I do that all the time. I apologize. What I said was, Jeremy, fantastic share. Thank you so very much. And to the remaining staff that are doing Oregon Youth Work programming, if we could lean into you for some bright spots and shares during our September 12, and that would include hearing from Miranda and a deeper introduction on her work and support there at the agency. And Doug, your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on something Jeremy just said about, the open invitation to go out and see crews. It really makes a difference. I think it's where folks really drink the Kool-Aid and understand how powerful and impactful these programs are. And we are working, I shared with Jim and Brooke just, I don't know, earlier this week probably. It looks like we may have found funding as to where we can do an in-person meeting, probably would be in April. And we would look to do a group site visit at that point too. So just another opportunity to get out and meet some of the participants in some of the programs. So
great. Okay, so I'm a jazz musician, so we're going to adapt as we go here. We've got 4 minutes left together. Brian, can you fit in a quick share in 4 minutes? And while he's doing that, could board members popcorn into the chat items you'd like to learn more or to have discussion points around this next gathering September 12th? If you would do that while Brian shares, and we'll end on that bright spot.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. I will. And thanks, Miranda, for recommending me, even though I thought Jim said you were going to be the last of the day, but that was a very, very good move. Brian Neese, I'm a workforce programs analyst here at the HEC. I'll just go quickly over my background. I spent 10 years with Clackamas County working for underserved populations of all kinds, older workers, female reentry, TANF clients, individuals with disabilities. And then I spent the next 10 years at the State of Oregon Workers' Comp Division doing worksite modification for return to work for injured workers. And I've been at the HEC about almost 2 years now and administer a number of grants, federal as well as general fund, and I'm engaged in renewable sector jobs and engagement with that sector. I have been traveling with my coworker, Steph Solomon, to a number of the local areas this summer, and that's really where my highlights come into play, the ones that I've seen. And if anybody that works with youth knows that engaging youth out of the pandemic is different. I mean, it was never the easiest thing in the world, but it's changed. And one of the highlights I've seen going and visiting these local areas is how engaged and how the unique ideas that they're bringing forth to try and meet these youth where they are and to try and get them excited about the programs that they offer. And the programs themselves are really have been geared towards the interests of those youth. And that is great. I mean, back in my day, when I was leaving high school, you either went to college, you went to work at the local mill, or you went in the military. And now there's so many programs out there within renewables, with renewable technology, personal agriculture, tiny home construction, things that can actually solve problems in today's world. And it's a world these youth are going to be living in. And so it's a real highlight to me to see these programs. And the other highlight is that these youth are engaged in those programs. The vast majority of youth that we serve, there are barriers that they have to overcome to do these programs. And the resiliency, I see these youth taking buses for 3 hours a day. I don't know that I would do that, but to see youth do that, to be engaged in these programs and to get those opportunities to move forward. Seeing youth just super proud to be working on a crew, a city crew, weed eating, and so proud of these boots that they have. I mean, something like boots, but it makes a world of difference, and it's something that they didn't have access to before. So even those little things can be highlights in the work that we do with these youth.
Thank you, Brian. It's wonderful. I think this idea of all of us having a chance to connect, and I'll post that in the chat, but also on our website, how can we lift these bright lights and shining programs and know where to stop when we're on the road, and as we're moving about the state and doing this work. Last round for any open questions. I am happy to stay on. I've got open time till 3:30, so if anybody wants to chat after we close the meeting and close recording, happy to do that. Any final questions, thoughts, comments? Well, gosh, if somebody had shown up more prepared and started the meeting on time, we'd have 3 more minutes for stories and sharing. So I apologize for not being right on the ball with that. A huge thank you, Doug and Ashley, specifically for all of the prep work on getting this ready for this meeting and for the previous kickoff meeting. Do I have to ask for a motion to close, or do I actually get to just like gavel it down?
I think you just gavel it.
Okay, look for an email from Ashley, Doug, and myself and Brooke just to kind of set some grounding for the next meeting. Thank you to the people who jumped in impromptu and provided us with some heart-filling stories to keep us motivated in the work and kind of center us on our why. So a big thank you to everybody. I hope you all have a safe, happy, healthy weekend. And especially for those families that are on the east side, you're in our thoughts and prayers, and we are with you. So thanks, everyone. We can stop the recording, and I will be glad to hang out.
All right, I am stopping the recording.
Bill Beans.
Yeah.
Boy, they all got out of here quick, didn't they?
All right.